Good evening. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter for Monday, February 26th, 2018. I'm Councilmember John Kwame. It's 7 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you at home keeping score, yes, there should be 7 of us sitting around the table, and there are not. There are 4. We will struggle on. You have before you an agenda. Are there any changes? Is there a motion to approve it?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first one is the regular council meeting from February 12th. In your packet, are there any corrections or additions? Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. We also have the minutes from the special meeting from February 15th, where the hospital was given permission to another milestone on their expansion project. Is there a motion for approval of those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign, minutes are approved. We will now schedule any visitors in the audience who would like to speak to an agenda item later in the meeting. If you identify yourself now, we can take note of it and call on you when that time comes. And there doesn't seem to be anybody. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to just address the council on any item for the general good of the community? And again, nobody wants to do that either. We have the consent agenda items, starting on page 10, going through page 35, for the resolution on page 36 and 37. Have you all gone through them? I will read them briefly. The ones that are greater than $7,500 and that have been budgeted. We are buying a 2011 pickup truck with 71,000 miles on it to replace a 1995 pickup with 147,000 miles on it for $15,000. We're buying wipers and miscellaneous for the wastewater plant. And we're buying electronic water meters for the water department for $49,980. Setting up our tire program we do every year for all the public works vehicles, not to exceed $10,000. A transformer for inventory. We did the initial cost and then checked the life cycle cost, and both of them, this particular vendor was the cheapest at $9,084. And buying 51 more trees for Community Spirit Park for $9,600. In addition, we're appointing Councilmember Carlin to the Parks Board as an additional member. And we have the list of disbursements through February 22nd. Are there any corrections, or is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Call a roll.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye. The stormwater budget is the first item of new business. It starts on page 38 with a resolution not on until page 53. I note in the background material that it says, in 10 paragraphs of background material, it says no rate increase, and then later on it says no change recommended in the rates, and then it says no additional revenue due to rate increases, and then it says no proposed change in the rate structure or rates for the 2018 year. So what's the real story?
Staff continues to be happy that the council members are reading the documentation and that it's clear that they were not anticipating any rate increase.
So how much is it really going up? What's the story here?
It's really not going up anything this time. I would mention that there are a number of things going on within the stormwater budget here. And the stormwater budget does a lot of things within your community, so I think it's important to note that this is the budget that takes care of intakes on curb lines where stormwater runs into, and it takes care of lots of ponds, and it mows lots of things and cleans lots of water before it goes to the Minnesota River or other locations within the community, so it's very important. The overall budget is a little bit over $800,000, and so I think that's important to note. Some of the information that we provide in your packet, Councilmember Kwame and members, looks forward, projects forward into 2022, 2023, and you'll see that on page 41. We do want to make note that while we anticipate in this year that your reserves will stand at better than 65% of the anticipated operational budget for the 2019 year, we do see that potentially changing into the longer term future. And so we don't want to miss that point on all of you. It's also important to note that we have a couple of projects that are lined up that we have placeholders for, and although we do not anticipate substantial capital costs in the 2018 year, we do want you to know that some of those needs are going to be triggered by additional development within your community. And so we do have them on that list, and we want to continue to make sure that you're aware that we continue to plan for those, and that in any given year that could change substantially. As you talked about at your workshop, there are a couple key factors in this, and really what we're trying to do looking forward is ensure that the fees that people pay and businesses pay as a part of their monthly utility bill go to operations and the maintenance, and then substantial capital improvements will need another discussion. You do have the things in place, the rules in place, the ordinances in place to ensure that if you make a substantial capital improvement in one of the sub-watersheds, of which I think there are more than 30 within St. Peter, you could assess it to those in that area. And so that's something that you're going to want to consider, I think, potentially moving forward. That isn't what we've done in the past, but it is certainly something that as you get to 2020, 2022, 2024, is something that I think, at least from a philosophical standpoint, deserves some additional discussion. The information is included in your packet, and as you said, Councilmember Kwame, there are a number of pages of numbers and information related to, well, we're buying a little bit of this, we're buying a little bit of that, but none are really what I would call substantial asset capital improvements to the city. And the overall stormwater fund, the budget that we're hoping that you'll set is at $558,814, and that's what the resolution says on page 53.
Other questions or comments? If someone is going to move the resolution, they could move it, changing in the electric enterprise fund in the resolution to stormwater fund.
Oh, please, that's an error on my part. I apologize. Yeah, it should say stormwater fund within the body of that. I apologize for
With
that.
that correction, I'll move the resolution.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any other discussion? Call roll.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame,
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Apparently, once again, we're supposed to be annually nice to the Irish, and the St. Patrick's Day Parade is coming up.
Councilmember Kwame, I'm not sure that that's what you've talked about in the past. The council has discussed that it's probably better to have them all in one place at that day. And so this allows for the parade to occur on March 17th. As you'll note within the information that's provided in your packet, this is a Saturday, and so they're looking to have the parade at 3 o'clock with the start of lining up approximately at 2:30. We'd provide for no parking within that area. It's typically our goal to sign that around noon time, and I think we pursue the same goal there. It would not be our intent to tow cars that have been there earlier in the morning and haven't had the chance to move since that point, but that's typically what we've done. This parade, this event is put on by the St. Peter Ambassadors, and as we require for community events and festivals of this type, they provide insurance for this event, naming you as an additional insured. The information is in your packet, and the resolution's on page 55 that outlines what we provide on that day. I do note that there is one error that I have within the resolution, and it does say 5 o'clock when it should say 3 o'clock in the second bullet point under item number 2.
Are there any other questions, comments? Someone like to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second it.
Call the roll.
Just a quick question. So you're saying 3 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock for that traffic control? Is that just to block off traffic anticipation for that 5 o'clock event? or-
The event is going to be at 3 o'clock since it's a Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
normally
right.
it's at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
But since
Saturday.
it's a Saturday, they moved it to 3 o'clock. And so, yeah, the resolution on page 55, at least I think how it was moved,
Yeah.
was for 3 o'clock in that second bullet point under number 2.
Gotcha.
Now, I'll call the roll.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilman McQuami.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next item is the execution of a one-year lease for the little triangle of land out Broadway Avenue by the high school to be farmed, as we've done in previous years.
This would be for a one-year lease, and you have had this in place for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, give or take a little bit. It's about 11 tillable acres. There's a slight increase to the lease amount for this upcoming year for the 2018 planting season, and the renter would be Brett Annixted, who has been the renter in past years. On the screen is a little map of where this is located. We've commonly referred to this as the Marion Lampert Triangle, and so that's the location that we're looking at.
Any comments or questions?
I just will just make the comment that I know that Brett really appreciates the fact that he can grow crops in this land, and he does a good job of staying out of the way of everybody that uses that road and things like that, and does a great job of being a good neighbor in that area. So I want to say I appreciate that too.
What was the reason for the rate increase?
A little bit of inflation, and frankly, this does not even cover the property taxes on the entire property. And so I'm trying to nudge that up and get that just to be a little bit closer. There's a pretty substantial amount of this property that is, or a pretty fair amount that is not tillable. And so I'm just trying to kind of get as close as I can to that amount. We've looked at this in the past as it's not just a revenue stream, it's an avoidance of expense issue as well. We'd have to maintain it in some other way. The land is not, under the mapping through extension service, this is not the most productive tillable land within our area.
Someone moving the,
I'll move the motion.
I'll second it.
any other comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Kwame,
Aye.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
The next item is to set wages for our seasonal employees, mostly in the Parks Department. We do this annually. We have a variety of different things putting pressure on wages.
We do, Councilmember Kwame, and so the substantive changes here are within the 2018 aquatics pay scale and the 2018 public works pay scale. There's only one modification to the summer rec pay scale, as they're shown on page 60. We kind of got rid of a column where we used to have what were called rec assistants, and we haven't had rec assistants for a couple of years, so that column of employees with their longevity, that 1, 2, 3, 4+ years, has been removed from this. There are a number of pressures that we have, and this is something that we look at every year. The council hasn't made, nor have we requested a change every year, but I would say every couple of years for sure there's some type of modification. From my perspective, my goal is to try and keep pace with what's in the marketplace for seasonal help of this type. Oftentimes we think of this seasonal help as just being young people And that isn't the case in all of these jobs, and particularly in Public Works, that is not the case. So there's whether it's young folks or seniors that work for us as mowers, there is competition for these part-time jobs in finding people that have the skill set and the necessary talents to do it. The modification-driven, or what drives the aquatics pay scale, really relates to, we continue to struggle to find lifeguards that are willing to take the training, go through the training on their own dime, and then be employed by us. That continues to be a struggle, and so we're continuing to bump up a little bit. I'll also tell you that some of my recommendation is based on that minimum wage compression that we've talked about in the past. This isn't a political commentary, but it does impact the opportunities that people have for summertime employment. And so again, trying to keep pace with that to ensure that we have quality folks that want to work in these jobs. Again, the information's in your packet on page 59 with the resolution starting on page 60.
Are there questions or comments?
Yeah, the one question I had, at what point would we see us paying for the lifeguard training for our lifeguards?
You know, we have talked about that. That's a challenge because oftentimes the majority of our lifeguards are youth.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're college students or high school students.
Mhm.
And so at that point, frankly, they're not in control of their own destiny or where they live and all those things. And we do see turnover for people coming and going within our community.
Mhm.
They have other opportunities to work at other locations as a lifeguard. And so there gets to be this question is, well, if we spend a couple $150 to provide the training for them,
Mhm.
can we keep them for sure for a season or maybe 2 or maybe 3? What's that level of investment? From my perspective, frankly, I'd rather pay them a little bit more and have them invest up front for that training that's necessary. It is provided here in town,
Mhm.
and there are ways to do that. But there are lots of different ways to take a look at that, but that's really where we've been so far. We do have scholarship. We do have a couple of scholarships that are available on a yearly basis for folks who want to get that lifeguard training, and if they might be listening or their parents might be listening, talking with the high school counselor is the best way to get kind of on the track for that.
Okay. I just look at it kind of in the same vein as we did a few years back with childcare folks, and at some point that it becomes an issue, that it's an issue. So I was just wondering how close to that we are.
Yeah, I don't have a good feel for how it relates to that child care issue. I get kind of from a process standpoint how the thought process works in that way. Our young people are challenged with lots of different things now, and there are lots of different opportunities not only for work but for camps and other things. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to skin this one, I'm sure.
Okay.
Any other questions? A motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any other questions? Call a roll.
Councilmember Brandt,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye. And now what I'm expecting will be the highlight of the evening is we'll have our acting director of public works come up and talk about improvements on North 3rd Street from Broadway to Chatham.
And certainly, we have the 2 Jeffs, so I don't know if you guys are going to tag team, or Newt, you have this one?
Sure. Council members, as you see in your packet, part of our 2018 budget for road and surface improvements is a section there on North 3rd Street between Broadway and Chatham Street, where we have that identified, part of our long-term plans to go in there and replace the surface with milling and overlay. Actually, not an overlay, just a milling and a replacement of the surface. And then we're also doing curb work and doing the radiuses on those 2 intersections of Chatham and Chestnut, where we'll put in handicap ADA standards and come into those requirements. Like I said, this is part of our 2018 road improvement program that the Street and Maintenance Department identified that we're going to work on this year. Bolton and Mink is going to do some work for us, basically getting the documents together providing some topo survey and really design on the curb line to help with the flow. So they'll be doing some initial engineering for us. City staff will be going in and milling the existing bituminous surface. We'll recapture that and reclaim it. We'll be doing maybe some base corrections in there by city staff. We'll be doing some underground work by city staff. The storm sewer will be making some corrections on those intersections, kind of updating some of those catch basins in that area and helping with the drainage in that area. We will then take out the cement work for contract bidding, which Bolton & Mink will help us accumulate those as part of this engineering estimate and helping with the pay estimates and the general construction documents.
Mayor and members, the information is included in your packet, and the resolution for this one is on page 65, allowing for the engineering work to take place for $16,400.
Other questions? Sure, Jeff?
In a few years ago, or maybe it was last year now, I can't remember, things kind of fly by. We did a reconstruction, was it of 4th Street, or did we do this exact same thing on 4th Street?
We just focused on the intersection of 4th and Chatham.
Okay.
There we had some storm sewer corrections and we had some structures that were failing in there, but it was just primarily focused on the intersection.
Okay.
You have not done a project exactly like this where
Correct.
you've modified the curb line and done a mill and overlay. You've done mill and overlay projects, you've done curb line projects and patched in, but this is kind of a combination based on the challenges that are in these two blocks from a structural standpoint.
Okay.
So the way I read this, the city is gonna do quite a bit of this work ourselves.
Correct. Other than the concrete work for curb and gutter and the sidewalk work, we'll contract that out for bidding.
So the sidewalks will be the ADA compliant sidewalks. We have there now, used to be ADA compliant.
Yes.
We have sidewalks going into the intersection now, and they are ramped, and they used to be compliant, and now they're not
Correct.
compliant.
We don't have the truncated domes in there.
Truncated
Truncated domes.
Truncated half domes. Yes,
Use the rub.
okay. Jeff?
What kind of time frame are we talking about? Worst case, best case? What time of year are we looking
In
at?
talking with maintenance, with Tim Mayo and Mike McCarthy, we think probably about a good 10 days,
Okay.
weather permitting. We don't have a firm date when we're gonna do this. I know when I talked to Mike initially, he talked about like after the 4th of July. One of the things that we got coming up this spring is Chard doing our sidewalk work around Veterans Park. So we just think that if we could kind of coordinate some of that, we'd probably get some good pricing, or Chard out of Belle Plaine would be a good competitive pricer.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Any other questions? A motion?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second that.
Any other questions? Call a roll.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
The next item is more complicated, and I'm sure you can explain it, because I struggled with it a little bit. We're going to ask for more money from the state, or not more money, or money from a different pocket, or something.
Yeah, I can explain that. I'll get to that question here in a minute. I'll just give you a little bit of background first. In 2014, 2015, the city used a combination of federal and state aid dollars to realign Washington Avenue between St. Julian Street and Dodd Avenue, Trunk Highway 22. Project required about relocating about 20 plus manufactured homes and their owners. Also required using a portion of the Ramsey Park, which is considered a 4F property by the federal regulators.
Sorry, 4F?
It's a 4F property. It was considered, it's protected by federal, I'm not sure if it's a statute, but it's considered a 4F property, meaning it's got some extra protection involved. You simply can't go in and
Pave it.
Okay. Use it for public right away, for roadways. So overall, there's about $1.5 million worth of right-of-way and manufactured homes that were purchased for the project. When using the MSA funds, which the city used on this project, there's a variety of rules that must be followed. Often cities and counties aren't able to meet some of those requirements. A lot of times they deal with horizontal, vertical curves, clearances between roadways and other obstructions along the highway. So what they do is they go in and request a variance, and that's what we're asking for here tonight, a variance of the state aid rules. But it basically allows, with approval of the variance committee, it allows them to construct that outside of the design guidelines. What we're requesting project development costs. They allow up to 25%. State aid rules do allow up to 25% of project development costs, or of the construction costs for project development. Project development is short for basically all the engineering, all the construction, all the testing, all the topographical surveys, all the environmental assessments. In this case, we had an environmental assessment, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Require the construction staking, everything for construction and design and bidding and the whole works. Our project was unique in that it required an environmental assessment, and that was, between that and the low bid that we received, that was probably the biggest reasons that we exceeded the 25% maximum here. So what we're doing is we're asking basically the council to consider approving a variance request, which is required as part of for the variance committee and the city's proposal to request the variance. They require that as part of that process. Summary of the project costs are on page 71, and to answer John's question is, we've already used MSA dollars to pay for this. So it's not new funding that we're requesting. It's money, it's a bookkeeping thing is what it ends up being when we submit our state aid payment request to state aid. They require that we show how much we spent on right-of-way, how much we spent on construction, how much we spent on engineering and project development. So as part of that, they allow only up to 25%. We're requesting more than that as part of this variance. And so if the variance committee approves it, they will allow us to use that additional percentage of MSA dollars to pay for that. Like I said, we've already expended it, we've already paid for it. It's just a bookkeeping on on the state side. So I don't know
Well,
if
if we've already spent the money, and it's just a bookkeeping thing, what do we care where on their books they have it? How do we benefit from this?
Well, they keep track of the city's MSA account balance. So they basically, when we have a state aid project, we're required to submit a state aid payment request to them saying we need X amount of dollars for construction of this project, for engineering or for whatever the project. So what they do is that state aid payment request essentially outlines all the costs that we have in the project. Then once they receive it, they'll deduct our state aid account for those dollars. Right now, if we submit a state aid payment request, we can submit only up to 25% of the construction cost. And so we're only showing that we're only using X amount, or 500 some odd $1,000, when in reality we need to use about $700,000.
So where did our extra $200,000 come from?
We were using MSA bond funds at the time.
We're borrowing ahead. We get an annual allowance from MSA, municipal state aid.
Right, but we got all our MSA funds right
Every
away.
Saturday, we get 25 cents, or whatever the allowance is from MSA. And so this way, they are saying that we did not get part of our 25 cents, so we get a little bit more next time. Because it goes into a different, totally
In a
different
way.
fund.
Let me provide a little bit of additional explanation. Hopefully I'll cut to the chase. The process requires that the council pass a resolution requesting the variance. That's the action tonight. Without the variance, Minnesota State Aid will say that's not an allowable expense under MSA rules. So city, you gotta find someplace else for that money to come from.
Oh,
And so it's important for us to get this variance from the rules, which was part of the original plan. We knew that the engineering costs, the relocation costs, all those things would be more than the allowance. We just didn't know how much more. That fact was complicated, as Jeff articulated, by the really low bids that you got. Because the number that's allowed is based on a percentage of construction cost, not a flat dollar amount. So this is providing for the process that's necessary. to use the funds that you already had planned to use. And so that's kind of where we're at.
So we paid for it with borrowed funds,
Sure.
and now we have to figure out where it is.
When
how
the
we're gonna-
settle up occurs, they look to make sure that it's within the rules.
Okay.
And so we want to make sure that we apply for the variance at the right time when they're doing that check.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Sure.
Jeff, my understanding is we're entitled up to 25%, and as I read back in here someplace, we spent about 35% or 34%. So we're looking at roughly 9% over what we were allowed to use.
That's correct.
And it really is based, as Jeff articulated, on complexity of the project. Normally, there's not relocation costs in many of these projects. We don't have to do that level of environmental assessment. We don't have to do a social justice assessment. We don't have to do a noise assessment on most MSA projects. Since this project had federal funds attached to it, those were required, drives the cost up. It's not a bad thing, it just is how it is.
And then our low bid, obviously, if we would have, the engineer's estimate was about 3 million, and the next lowest bidder, I think, was about 3.1, and, we would have been within 25% of those, but we got a great bid from Chart at the time, and saved us some money too, so.
Ed?
Wasn't that project done a couple years ago?
Yes, it was.
I don't understand why it's coming to us now, but
There's a list of, there's a lot of expenses, basically. There's about 4 or 5 other MSA projects that were going on at the same time, so we had to go through and determine which expenses went where, because there was just so many projects going on, and the way it was being tracked, so.
okay.
It's not unusual for a project of this scale to have a couple-year lag time before setup occurs.
Okay.
And then
Thanks for the answer.
then you realize what we pay Bolton and Mink is really worth it.
Good point.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any other questions? Call the roll.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame?
Aye.
Councilmember Brand?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
We have a donation made to the city for the baseball field at Veterans Park.
Councilmember Kwame, yes. The president of the Baseball Association here is here if you have any more detailed questions, but this is a donation acceptance, and as you know, under your rules, any donation that's over $5,000 requires separate action on the part of the city council. This is for $9,661, and it is to replace and refurbish the existing sound PA system at Veterans Field. This is something, as is shown in your packet on page 74, that is part of the work, the planning that has gone on through the Park and Recreation Board. So it's not something that's outside of their list, it's on their list. And the Parks and Recreation Board has submitted a recommendation for you to accept this donation, again, of $9,661 and some odd cents. The resolution for the council is on page 77.
Any questions or comments?
No, I'd just like to thank the Baseball Association for their contribution to one of our parks.
Absolutely.
It's appreciated.
Both the city of Mankato and the city of North Mankato have been in the paper, not that I read that paper, but in that paper about sound systems and complaints by neighbors, not necessarily for baseball fields, but for their concerts and such. Has there ever been any kind of issue like that with our fields?
We do on occasion have complaints or concerns. We have concerns on occasion from the music at the pool as well. And so sometimes we get complaints about lights. We do try and address those appropriately, and the folks that manage those fields are taking care of those operations at that time. We make sure to try and notify them and adjust appropriately. These are parks that are available for public use until 10 o'clock at night in the summer. And so while that doesn't mean everything can be blaring until 10 o'clock at night, it does provide a certain amount of latitude within the operations to conduct business as usual, at least what we would consider usual and customary as part of the activities going on.
We've had sound system down there for a long time.
Yeah, that's part of the original tornado stuff when they rebuilt all that. One of the features that I got on this sound system, the speakers will be replaced, and they talk about it has a directional sound, so the noise won't carry into the neighborhood. It's one of the features. I'm kind of looking forward to see how that really sounds, because they make reference to they can keep, with the technology now, they can keep the speakers within the ballpark. So we just don't get this wandering of a sound system or carrying over into the neighborhood, so it'll be interesting to see. But there's a lot of bells and whistles for $9,600, so it'll be interesting. But I just wanted to highlight also too, one of the successful things when we built the press box is we went way over our funding there, and then come to the end of the year, I did get some surprise donations that allowed us to go ahead and make this purchase here. So there were some generous donators at tax season coming up to make us available for that.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye. We'll be calling for a closed session for the purpose of
Labor.
considering for labor negotiations for the law enforcement, local services, communications technicians, renewal of their contract. Somebody want to make a motion and try and put together the legal requirements in the phrasing to,
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
that isn't even close. Jeff's the only one who can do it.
I can.
Knock yourself
Well,
out.
I will second the motion asking for a closed session for the purpose of contract negotiations for the law enforcement.
Thank you very much. Call the roll.
If I can, before I call the roll, I would like to mention that my belief is that the council is likely to come back into open session in a relatively short period of time here to take action, and then we'd have open session for reports and adjournment of the meeting. So I'll call the roll. Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye.
So with that motion being passed. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Brand. Sorry about that, Jeff.
Aye.
All right.
Made such a spectacular second.
Yeah, I know.
So with that action, we would ask that the room be cleared, and we'll come and yell for you if you want to come back and hear the action after that point.
It is 7:47 PM on February 26, 2018, resuming open session for the city council meeting. We have a next item is the vote on the contract for the communications union.
Council members, I passed out information to you and anyone in the audience that was willing to take one about LELS 242, which is the communication technicians, or what we commonly call dispatchers. You did have a closed session on this, and what I'm recommending is agreeing to a collective bargaining agreement with the communication technicians, a one-year agreement for the year 2018, a wage increase of 2.5% across the board for all folks in that group. And then there are a couple of date changes and a few typos that always occur. The resolution for this is included on the back of the paper of the memo that I provided to you, and I think provides the appropriate parameters for entering into the agreement.
Any comments or questions about the proposed agreement? Is there a motion to approve it?
I'll make the motion.
In second?
I'll second it.
Any questions? Call roll.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Kwame,
Aye.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
I hit you all this time? All right, excellent.
That concludes our regular business. We have reports. There are only 4 of us here tonight because Mayor Zeman and Councilmember Carlin are in Washington, D.C. at the APPA conference. That'd be American Public Power Association conference, hanging out with members of the SMPPA, the Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Agency we belong to, and MMUA, the Minnesota Municipal Utility Association. There will probably be maybe a couple dozen SIMPA members and staff out there, and maybe 100 MMUA members, and a couple of thousand APPA members from around the country working on public power issues. In addition, then, they will use this opportunity to lobby our senators and representatives on local issues. They'll be back later this week, and we hope to have a report at our next meeting. Councilmember Grams is ill today, so we went from 7 to 4. In addition, of course, Public Works Director Moulton is also in Washington for the APPA conference, which is why we were blessed with Jeff, who did a wonderful job. The other thing that happened was that we had the home show in Mankato. We had a booth there with Southwestern Minnesota Housing Partnership to show off our houses in Traverse Green. And I spent 4 hours there in a booth, had a wonderful time talking to people who maybe want to buy a house and move to St. Peter. I never would have thought that that kind of effort would have resulted in people expressing interest, but apparently it does. What do I know? And of course, this is our first meeting without Paula O'Connell, who is now Faribault at Rice County, her first day on the job today. We're going to be missing her, but the staff she left behind is are wonderful people. I'm sure they'll do very well. And that's the extent of my reports.
Council members, I have 3 items that I want to mention. The first one is to give you an update on the tornado event, which is going to occur on March 29th out at the new high school. The start time now is at 5:15, and so please watch. There'll be some additional information that will come out in future hot sheets. The spokesperson, since this is a consortium of folks, the entities that's working on it, including the Nicolet County Historical Society, Nicolet County, certainly Gustavus has been fantastic with providing assistance, the Chamber of Commerce, School District 508, and the City of St. Peter. Jessica Becker is the spokesperson for the event, and I think we have a really nice event planned. We have, I think, 2 meetings left before the event of that group. And this next week, or at the end of this week, we'll be out at the high school and kind of on the ground there and making some final logistical decisions about how things are supposed to fit together. So encourage people to watch for that. There are about 700 plus seats in that auditorium, and there will be opportunity to watch it via video if there's more people than that in the commons area of the new high school. And so we are also planning to record it so it can be shown on SPPA in the future as well. I would like to mention for the folks that participate in the Nicolet County City of St. Peter Liaison Committee meeting, there's a committee meeting on Thursday at 10:30. This one is at the courthouse. And then the last one that I have is that Jeff and his team have a meeting for the SWIP, which is, some of you hear us talk about the SWIP or being an MS4 community. This relates to stormwater. So there's a community meeting. We do have contractors on occasion on attend and hear updates on the state and local laws if there are changes or modifications that are occurring. And so that is occurring on Thursday, March 1st, and is from 1 to 4 here at the community center. So anybody that wants to attend that, it's a great educational opportunity. I think Amy Cam is in charge of that. She's a stormwater foreman and does a really great job of making sure that there's wonderful information about what we're doing and what things are important related to stormwater within St. Peter. Council members, that's the last report that I have for you tonight.
Anybody else have any other business? Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Hate to say it, John, but you did a good job.